What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the J Area Podcast. My name is Jose Ramos Jr., and on this podcast, you would know that I've been covering professional wrestling as it has become the hottest it has been within the last 25 years. And fresh off of another hit episode of Monday Night Raw, there's a couple of points and a couple of storylines that I think we should address in order to maintain the level of momentum that the podcast has been showing in these last couple of weeks. Obviously, if you would have seen this past episode of Monday Night Raw, you would know that in the main event, it saw the Intercontinental Champion Sami Zayn defending his title against Chad Gable in his hometown of Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Now, this match was an all-timer, especially that of the Canada variety. The competitiveness and the athleticism that was on display during this matchup between Sami Zayn and Chad Gable, and the story that they've been telling between these two, have been top-notch. I know for myself personally, the Intercontinental Championship has always been one of those titles that I've always had a fond memory of, and quite frankly, behind the WWE Championship, it's my favorite title because of what it represents, because of the history that is aligned with that title, and how it has really become known as the workman's title. Now, there was a period in time where it really wasn't recognized as that. It was just a secondary title that they were able to throw on anybody. But when you have names like a Randy Macho Man Savage, Bret the Hitman Hart, Shawn Michaels, Mr. Perfect, Roddy Piper, just to name a few from the early 90s and late 80s, and then you fast forward and you see guys like a Razor Ramon, you see guys like a Diesel, Rocky Maivia, Triple H, to now we have the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion in Gunther, 666 days. It has really become the premier title, certainly within the WWE, as well as the main secondary title, no disrespect to the United States Championship. But the lineage and the history that is with that Intercontinental title makes it all the while why we see Chad Gable obsessed with obtaining this gold. The story they've been telling with Chad Gable has been nothing short of amazing. I myself have been a fan of Chad Gable since his years in NXT as a tag team with Jason Jordan, of course, as a member of American Alpha, and what he was able to do as a tag team competitor, and then transition to that of a single star. Chad Gable is certainly one of those wrestlers that needs more attention. He's underrated, in my opinion, and his character work has certainly improved, especially with that of the Alpha Academy. So when you look back, all the way back to last fall, when he was challenging Gunther for that very same Intercontinental title, and you can see just the level of dedication, the devotion that he was setting forward to challenge the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time. And to see him come short time and time again, although he was the first individual to defeat Gunther on the main roster, of course via countout, but he wasn't able to secure the Intercontinental Championship, and a lasting image that will stay with us for the rest of his career, and quite frankly, will stay with his legacy, will be the image of his children in tears as he had lost to Gunther. So he wants this redemption angle. He wants to be able to get back to that title and ultimately win it for his family, for his daughters. And in the lead to WrestleMania 40, when we got to the gauntlet match, where he was supposed to defeat Sami Zayn and challenge Gunther for that very same title at WrestleMania 40, he just told Sami Zayn, "It just means that more to me." Ultimately, he wasn't able to do so, and Sami Zayn would go on to defeat Gunther at WrestleMania 40 in what I think was the second best match of the WrestleMania weekend, of course behind the main event of Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns. But Chad Gable, in his pursuit of this title, you can see the wheels turning. Not unlike Drew McIntyre, who became so honed in on that World Heavyweight Championship that he became obsessed. He would lose sight of who he was as a babyface, essentially, and would turn to the dark side. Would Chad Gable turn heel? Was he becoming more and more aggressive with his wrestling style and his personality and his character work? Yet to be seen, especially in this nature regarding the Intercontinental Championship. But when Sami Zayn wins the Intercontinental title, and one of the first interactions is with Chad Gable, and he tells him that you owe me a favor. And Sami Zayn absolutely obliges. He says, I'll give you an Intercontinental Championship match. And not just any Intercontinental Championship match, but in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, which is one of the premier cities for professional wrestling. So the stage is set. It's Monday Night Raw. It's the main event. And before we even get to that main event, I have to acknowledge the transition from that Jey Uso exit, where he climbs up through the crowd, goes out through the concourse, and is basically at the entrance arena, and he passes by Sami Zayn. He looks at Sami, what are you doing? And Sami Zayn expressing how proud he is that he was watching wrestling in this very arena, and now he will enter through the front door like he did so many years again. And you see the camera work. It's all in one shot. We follow Jey Uso outside to meet Sami Zayn, and then Sami Zayn, we follow him back in, and we're following behind him through the crowd, through a sea of humanity, if you will. And the music is blaring, the crowd is singing along, and you can feel the emotion. I think it's a top-tier entrance in Monday Night Raw history. I mean, let alone, it might have the capability of being entrance of the year, and it's only April of 2024. But just the level of emotion that you can sense from this crowd, a crowd that wasn't even sold out, by the way, because they broke the streak for most televised events in a row having a sellout. And unfortunately, this episode of Monday Night Raw was not able to do so. Now, it was, I think, 15,000 plus, which is nothing to scoff at. But that just shows you how hot the product has been in these last, few months, in the last couple of years, even. But we go back into the main event, and it's a competitive back and forth that really showcases the wrestling ability of a Chad Gable and a Sami Zayn, as well as the character work of a Sami Zayn, who might be up there as one of the best of all time in terms of his connection with the crowd. And I look at Sami Zayn, and I remember, watching this match, and I came to the conclusion, for me, personally, because of course this podcast and the YouTube channel is, titled after my name because it's all my beliefs. Now, whether or not you agree with them, that's up for debate. But for me, I look at Sami Zayn as another incarnation of a Mick Foley. And their styles are so different. But I look at the heart of it all. There's not many people who can say a bad thing about Mick Foley. His connection with the crowd, his likability, that underdog characteristics that he had, especially in 1999 when he first won the WWE title against The Rock. I see very much that in Sami Zayn, his connection to the crowd, us pulling for him and wanting him to overcome the odds, whether it was facing Roman Reigns at Elimination Chamber last year, or whether it was facing Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship. That connection with the crowd, that willingness to fight for what he believes in and never give up. That's the kind of babyface I want to get behind. So whenever I see Sami Zayn come through the curtain and getting ready for a match, and we hear his entrance music, I love it. It takes me back all the way to when I was a kid, because I believed in these superstars. I believed in these wrestlers who were able to make me feel something. And ultimately, that's what the goal of the game is. You want to connect with the audience so that they feel something. And watching this back, Chad Gable versus Sami Zayn, if you didn't have a chance to check it out, please do so, because that match, top tier. It was phenomenal. And ultimately, Sami Zayn would get the win. He'd get the upper hand, and he would retain the Intercontinental Championship in his very first defense as champion. And you see him in the crowd. He meets his wife, who's sitting in the front row, and they're celebrating, they're hugging, they share a moment, they kiss. And just when you think the show's about to end, Chad Gable emerges, pulling Sami Zayn away from his wife, pulling him in for a German suplex right onto the floor. And the ensuing attack that would lead to an ankle lock, wrapped around the ropes and the ring posts. Chad Gable just snaps. And what wasn't caught on the live television broadcast, but instead was just purely for the audience, was a crowd, a Montreal crowd, booing Chad Gable, to the point where they're cheering expletives like "F you, Chad Gable." Now that's real heat. That's heel heat. And they got to capitalize on that, because they have real potential with this Chad Gable character. Not only has he become one of the best wrestlers that the company has, but he has potential to have one of the best character arcs, that obsession over the Intercontinental Championship, a title that has so much prestige, so much honor, and the equity that has been built up these last couple of years, it has really become one of the top prizes within the WWE. So I'm curious to see how they move forward with this Chad Gable, storyline, especially against Sami Zayn. Will there be a rematch? And if not, where do we go from here? I don't see how you can just move past this. I'm sure Sami Zayn is going to want to have some kind of answer, some kind of retaliation against someone that he thought was his friend, who even prepared him for his match against Gunther. But regardless, I'm hoping what they're able to do is build up enough momentum with Chad Gable. And if you remember back when he was a tag team with Jason Jordan, and they hinted that Kurt Angle had a long-lost son, everyone thought Chad Gable. But for some reason, they went with Jason Jordan, maybe because it wasn't the obvious choice and they wanted to throw a little swerve there. But Chad Gable's the answer. I'm never one to say, oh, we should make him the next this or we should make him the next that. Chad Gable has that potential to be a Kurt Angle-like presentation, and certainly in this era. And the era that we're in really favors that. Athletic, comedic timing, the intensity. He has all the tools that it takes to be a star. The only thing he lacks is the size. But in today's wrestling world, you don't really need that. You don't need that. Look at Rey Mysterio, who's one of the greatest of all time, while also being one of the smallest wrestlers there are ever. So Chad Gable, again, that heel turn was well needed. I thought he was doing great as the captain and the coach of the Alpha Academy. And that's another wrinkle in the story. Where do we go from here in terms of Maxine Dupree and Otis and Akira Tozawa? Are they going to fall in line with Chad Gable? Is Alpha Academy going to break up? Or is he going to do his own thing and leave them to fend off for their own battles? It's a lot going on, and I'm here for it. I'm here for that character development. I'm here for the long-term booking. And who knows? Maybe Chad Gable is the one to defeat Sami Zayn. He did just win the championship after all, but maybe he's going to be the guy to dethrone Sami Zayn as the Intercontinental Champion. And you want to talk about championships? Look at how the show opened. Rhea Ripley having to relinquish and therefore vacate her Women's World Championship after holding the title for over a year, 380 days to be specific. Another long reign that must come to an end, unfortunately, due to injury. But the way they can go about it is very interesting in itself because of this feud with Liv Morgan. If you remember back a year ago, who's the one that injured Liv Morgan and cost her so many months, nearly a year of her career? Rhea Ripley. And now the roles are reversed. Liv Morgan essentially injures Rhea Ripley, causing her to relinquish this championship, and people are booing. When technically she should be the babyface who wanted that revenge against the individual who cost them nearly a year of their career. And now we have this opportunity to do a double turn. Rhea Ripley technically is the heel, even though everyone cheers her. Liv Morgan, technically the babyface, but now people are turning on Liv Morgan. And the WWE has an opportunity to do that double turn and change Liv Morgan into this heel and essentially catapult Rhea Ripley to her rightful place as the main star of the division, as if she wasn't already. So I'm curious to see how long is this injury going to be. I know I saw reports that it might take up to at least 3 months of her being gone, and we've seen that wrist injury has been bugging her for the last couple of months. But if it comes to the point where you have to remove the title, what are we going to do here? Clearly she'll come back as a babyface. She won't be booed. Rhea Ripley has been a staple of Monday Night Raw, certainly of the division, as I mentioned, and a top-tier star within the company for quite some time now. So to see her have to relinquish that title and vacate it, it's really a shame. Because I could have honestly seen her hold on to that title all the way up until WrestleMania 41, having a 2-year reign. Now, whether or not she would have lost that title at WrestleMania 41, we won't know. But it's just a shame. It's 380 days, very much so like John Cena's title reign from 2006 to 2007, where he held it for 380 days, but had to relinquish it due to a torn pectoral tendon. That would see him return only 3 months later at the Royal Rumble event in 2008, and we all know how that run went. So Rhea Ripley having to relinquish that title, just a shame. Really is. But the way they can go about it can really redeem it, and hopefully it is a speedy recovery. It is an efficient recovery where we can see her come to 100%. And obviously this upcoming episode of Monday Night Raw, they've already advertised someone's going to get crowned as the women's champion. But what are they going to do? A battle royal? Fatal 4-way match? It can't be one-on-one. I wouldn't be surprised if they do some kind of tournament. I think that would be the best way to do it and capitalize on it and get some quality matches in the process. So I'm thinking that's the route they're going to take. At least I would hope. I saw reports that they're going to crown a champion on Monday, but I'm thinking maybe it'll be the first steps up until then to see how we get there. But then Monday Night Raw, it wasn't just about title changes or relinquishing titles. We got new championship titles. And not like all new together, but new designs, which is something that I've been preaching for, especially regarding these set of titles. The WWE Raw Tag Team Championships have been in existence since 2016 when they were first introduced while the New Day was feuding with The Bar. And when they were introduced with those red straps, I was never a fan. These were originally what the Unified Tag Team Championships were. Back in the Ruthless Aggression era, you had your World Tag titles and the WWE Tag titles, and they unified them at WrestleMania 25 when it was The Miz and Morrison who defeated Carlito and Primo. Then they morphed them into what they call the penny titles, essentially, which was one of the ugliest title designs I've ever seen as a wrestling fan. But thankfully, now that at WrestleMania 40 the titles were split and we have two sets of championships again, one for Raw and one for SmackDown respectively, Triple H arrives on Monday Night Raw and they do this whole presentation where they have a new set of tag titles for the Awesome Truth. And they even go so far to change the name, reverting back to the classic World Tag Team Championships, which would only suggest that in this upcoming episode of SmackDown, the SmackDown tag titles will probably revert to the WWE Tag Team Championships like how it was in the Ruthless Aggression era. The Raw titles get a new, revamped look, very much similar to the Women's World Championship and the World Heavyweight title that Damian Priest currently holds, with a slight little deviation as there's red lettering that says World Tag Team Championships. I'm all for it. It's something different. I don't know how I feel about having all these titles look so similar, but I like that it's different. It actually looks like a championship title. And you have the name World Tag Team Championships, and me growing up in the Ruthless Aggression era, you're just tugging at the nostalgia. You're tugging at the heartstrings now. So I'm a fan of it. And to see the interaction between The Miz and R-Truth and Triple H and Adam Pearce, always a fun time, always so entertaining. And I love the reference that he made calling Triple H Tommaso Ciampa because he calls Tommaso Ciampa Triple H. And speaking of Tommaso Ciampa, him and Johnny Gargano are now your number one contenders for those very same World Tag Team Championships, which we will see that matchup this upcoming Monday Night Raw. So tune in for that. I'm a fan of the Awesome Truth, but I would really like to see DIY win those tag titles, even though it's only been a couple weeks since they won them. But Monday Night Raw didn't only have a new set of championships as well. We've been getting teases from last week to this last Friday Night SmackDown to this episode of Monday Night Raw. A lot of interesting and cryptic messages have been popping up on WWE television these last couple of shows. You go back to last Monday Night Raw, there was a promo segment for A. Bronson Reed, and there was a little bit of a static that went on. And if you slow it right, you'll see in the corner, it says the word hello. At first, I didn't notice it. I thought it was some kind of issue with the feed, right? But then obviously the internet picks up on it, and it says hello. Okay. It's interesting. Didn't think too much of it. Then you go to Friday Night SmackDown, and during the women's tag match, another static goes. And this isn't verbatim, but it says something along the lines of, "You forgot about us. Now You've piqued my interest. You had my attention with that Bronson Reed promo. Now you have my attention. So we come to Monday Night Raw, and it's the New Day who are walking in for the Triple Threat #1 Contenders match, which was eventually won by DIY, as I mentioned. And again, another static, but this one is very noticeable, very obvious as well. And there's a QR code that was followed after showing some kind of weird imagery, something of like a bird-like symbol. And speaking of symbols, there was another symbol that was also there. And there was a quick blink and you miss it moment where there was that QR code. And I am watching this show. I'm watching it with my brother and my mom, who we always try to catch Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown every week. And immediately we get caught off guard. Like, whoa, what was that? So having to rewind it and go back and, we catch it. And it's this interesting, puzzle almost. 2 sets. And we're thinking, well, how the hell are we going to solve this? Because I love when WWE did this with Bray Wyatt back in 2022 in his return at Extreme Rules with the White Rabbit gimmick. I thought that was fantastic. I love interactive stuff like that, especially when it's eerie. And it has that sense of mystery to it. I'm a huge fan of what they're doing. A lot of speculation as to who it is, essentially. Many fans on the internet, like myself included, believe it's some kind of connection to the Uncle Howdy character that Bo Dallas Taylor Rotunda had portrayed with his brother Bray Wyatt. But it's very interesting. So back to the QR code. We get to the QR code and you see these 2 messages. And essentially I thought, well, maybe you turn it upside down. No, nothing. Well, let me go in the mirror and kind of like just show it in a reflection. Maybe it'll say something. No, nothing. And my mom, she's the one that had the bright idea of like, wait a minute, maybe it's one word, but we have to combine them in order for them to line up and match. And this is like a dream come true for us, because not only have I been a fan of pro wrestling for 25 years now, but being that her and I are very much fans of like true crime, and for example, the movie Zodiac, starring Robert Downey Jr., Mark Ruffalo, and Jake Gyllenhaal, one of my all-time favorite films. Having this opportunity to solve a puzzle and learn a message and really get down to the cryptic meaning of what the WWE is trying to present. Now that we just had a field day with that. So we successfully were able to combine the messages, and it led to a link, a WWE.com/ was like UEDNJ something. It was a link. So we clicked the link and it leads you to an image that refers, I did some research, it refers to Plato's cave and how one was stuck inside of a cave and he was forced to stare at a wall. And I might be butchering the story here because I was so focused on the video that was accompanied with it, but he would stare at a wall and they had fire in the back, and someone would show just imagery that would then cast a shadow. It's really interesting. I'd have to do more, more of a deep dive of research to go into it. And I've learned now that the WWE, certainly in this Paul Levesque era, the Renaissance era, if you will, everything's done for a reason, right? There's nothing done just to do it. So essentially there's a video that's accompanied with this message. And the message states, there's a quote that says, "Time to wake up," right? Followed by another one that says, "Patience, it's almost time." And again, flashing this imagery of the bird and the symbol. And it's like, what does it mean? What does it all mean? It says patience, it's almost time. Almost time for what? Who's coming? And who, regardless of who it is, what do they want? What's their goal? What's the end game? That's the interesting part of it all. If it is Uncle Howdy, who's he bringing with him? Because he said, you forgot about us. And if you watch that Bray Wyatt documentary, you would know that at the end of it, there was a tease about Uncle Howdy. And to see what they'll do with it, I'm getting chills just thinking about it, because I love that aspect of wrestling where it's supernatural. I was so invested and interested in characters like The Undertaker, like Kane, like Papa Shango. I'm into that. So to see what they're doing, especially in modern wrestling, where it's hard to get away with kayfabe and working an angle, especially when it's a supernatural angle. That's why I loved Bray Wyatt. It was different. It was unique. It was exciting. It was eerie. It blurred the lines of what was like hokiness and silliness, and also those horror elements that I love in like scary movies. So keep an eye on those messages. I wouldn't be surprised if something on Friday Night SmackDown shows up, another one on Monday Night Raw, because those white rabbit imagery during the Bray Wyatt run had ran for what felt like a couple months. So when are these guys going to debut? Will it be at Backlash? Will it be at the draft, an episode of Monday Night Raw, SmackDown, NXT? Because apparently they're trying to push that as a third brand again. And don't even get me started with the draft. I'm looking so forward to the draft. Although maybe things won't change for the most part, I'm always interested because to see the shakeup and what possible storylines we're going to see, especially now that we have a new set of tag titles. Probably going to see another set on SmackDown, as I mentioned. How are they going to go about it? Who's going where? And as we inch closer and closer to the move to Netflix, how will the product evolve? Because I'll tell you right now, one of the things that I look forward to every Monday night and SmackDown is the camera work. The production team has been on fire. I've been telling my family and everyone that'll listen, these guys might mess around and win an Emmy because the camera work is tremendous. The way they're able to take one shots with this camera, the 8K camera that they used for the presentation during the championship matches at WrestleMania 40, top tier. I'm a big, movie buff. I love film. As you would know, the early stages of this podcast and the YouTube channel followed film for, quite some time before we finally found our footing in professional wrestling. So to combine the technical aspects of camera work and film and combining it with the world of professional wrestling is a dream come true for me. And I think it's hilarious that people on the internet have been kind of criticizing Kevin Dunn, the old, director of camera work and production, because, man, we could have been getting this for so long. Who knows how long we could have been getting this type of quality presentation. And might I say, speaking of presentation, that set that they've been using for Friday Night SmackDown and Monday Night Raw, that like minimalistic set where it's just like the LED screen and above it there's kind of a fixture with lights. I do miss the old times of like the SmackDown Fist, but I'm a fan of this. It's not just a big screen like how it used to be for Raw the last few years. It's something different. And it kind of makes the arena look almost smaller and more quaint so that the crowd really pops and the noise level really pops. I've said it before and I'll keep saying it again. The WWE has been firing on all cylinders. It is the hottest it has been in 25 years. Like The Rock said, wrestling is cool again. For me, for us, for dedicated fans who have been with this product, who have been with this sport all our lives, or for decades, no matter how old you are or how long you've been watching, whether you've been watching for 20 years or for 2 weeks, you cannot argue it's something different right now. We are reaching essentially a new era. They keep saying it and it's becoming a little bit more redundant, but it's fact. It's 100% true. And I had a friend of mine, you guys know him, Daniel, who's been on the podcast. He's even asked me in the past, if I want to start watching, where do I start? What year is a good year to pick up? And I told him the honest to God truth. So for anybody out there who isn't as big of a pro wrestling fan or who would like to get into pro wrestling, the best time to start watching wrestling is now. Start watching it now. Start getting acclimated to the storylines. Start picking out your favorites. And if you really become invested, work your way backwards. Start learning the origins, looking at the debuts, early storylines and how they get referenced to nowadays, but you start now and then you work your way back. Just like watching a football team or any sporting team, you watch the product now, you follow the team now, and you learn its history so that when the next time you see them play, the next time you see them compete, you have that sense of pride and that amount of knowledge to apply to the product and become invested not only as a fan but as a consumer. Because now that we're able to cover this on this podcast, on the YouTube channel. I look forward to sharing videos with you, sharing this discourse and these conversations with you guys every time. And I love the feedback. The subscriber count has been going up. Likes have been going up. Shares are going up. There's more comments being submitted, good and bad. But as long as we're talking professional wrestling, I'm having a good time. So the amount of feedback that you guys have been giving me, especially in these last couple of months, have been tremendous. Please keep doing so. Don't be afraid to like, share, and subscribe. Keep sharing the content with your friends and family so we can talk about wrestling and talk about the new era that has been ushered in. And feel free to comment down below what you guys think of this past Monday Night Raw. What do you think about the new tag titles? Rhea Ripley and her injury having to relinquish the title. When do you think she'll come back? And as for Sami Zayn and Chad Gable, do you think their story's over, or are they going to continue on this feud heading into Backlash, Paris, France? As always, my name is Jose Ramos Jr. You can find me on all social media outlets at JustJose_3. I look very much forward to sharing more content with you guys, because if you guys like professional wrestling as much as I do, please remember to subscribe to our podcast on Spotify. It's J Area Podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jose Ramos Jr. Hey, that's me. And get all episodes, all video episodes of the J Area Podcast, aside from the daily shorts that I provide. They're little snippets, little highlights of the videos that I provide. And on Monday and Friday, I do upload other videos, other side videos that make reference to the daily occurrence, not only in the WWE, but in All Elite Wrestling, who have their own thing going on. And I also love that product. They're kind of in a lull at the moment, but it's professional wrestling. And I like my professional wrestling like a buffet line. I might want a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But as long as you're feeding me good, how happy can I not be, right? Again, my name is Jose Ramos Jr. Thank you guys for joining me on this episode of the podcast. Again, please continue to subscribe, like, and share the content that I produce, because ultimately it's not only to please myself and have a good time, but I want to share it all with you. So again, thank you guys. Much love, appreciation. I will see you all in the next episode of the J Area Podcast.